interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
I'm back, bitches. So what does it all mean? I'm finally back and there's no more revisited media, even though I have enough, probably not as much as Prince, but I figure if I do 3 to 4 episodes and then go on hiatus where I can work on other things like I worked on the past 6 weeks, you can expect PIT, book tea, Star Trek tea, sports tea, pop culture tea, and reality TV tea. And in between, you could also expect republishing and chair twerking because I have bad knees and feet. Thank you for joining me for this episode of TNFro is Reading, or a bonus episode of TNFro's Bar if I get sponsors, but not until then. And enjoy this shake mix. My apologies to Henry Mancini, but a riff on the Pink Panther theme is in alignment with a podcast segment dedicated to a fictional PI and all about true crime, or fictional crime in this case. Don't you think? A scam is a scam. There are some frauds so well conducted that it would be stupid not to be deceived by them. This is an old school fraudster, Charles Caleb Colton, a 19th century British kook. He was a cleric, a writer, and he himself was a scammer. He fled from his creditors, ended up in the gambling salons in France, won a fortune, lost a fortune, and then he killed himself instead of going through some type of surgery. I don't know if I would want to go through surgery without antibiotics and clean, sterile technique in the 19th century. Who that? That's who I asked myself when I read this article in the New York Times, Sunday New York Times, that is, on the 18th. So this was about 2 weeks ago now. Front page, we got this ugly Johnny Depp wannabe talking about how his crypto dreams unravel because it's another grift. And I basically used the Data Sleuth Fraud Detection Worksheet to kind of figure this out because one of his grifts unwind. First and foremost, Bitcoin and crypto are all a scam. You can't tell me anything that we got a whole bunch of mugs through calculations are worth billions. And that's exactly with this child actor. Because he basically, I think he was in Mighty Ducks or something, some other bit part. And he burst on the scene with his brothers, and they started Blockchain Capital back in 2013. He's out of that, and it's wild because I think his parents were Hispanic, or one of his parents was of Hispanic descent. And He is, I believe he might be the youngest of Bart and Bradford peers, because he's Brock. He goes on to become chairman and CEO of several other Bitcoin exchanges. He basically acquires other companies to make one big company. One of them was a very successful multiplayer platform that ended up, they tried to acquire it, and then they found out that it was the deal that they were trying to cut, they had no capital to be able to fund it. He had gotten out a number of years before, so he lucked that out that he didn't get caught in that scam. However, back in 2012, after Hurricane Maria, I believe, or during that time, Puerto Rico became a tax haven for these new money hoes. And he began to try to get his other money friends to come down, invest, and take over the island. It was the new era colonization. First the Spanish, then the United States, now these big money grifters. They get bit down there, bought up a whole bunch of property, raised the property prices so none of the locals could afford it. Now we have a housing crisis, and these grifters did not come through on what they were promising. Case in point, back in, I believe it was 2018, when he actually came down there, he entered into a deal to buy the W Hotel, which had been closed. He was going to take it over. They were going to revamp it, bring jobs, bring tourism back. This was his part of his spiel, but nobody basically, I don't think anybody checked his resume or proof of funds. Where was that? They all wanted to get on because he spun a great game. He used his acting chops to basically convince a whole bunch of people to come up off a whole bunch of cash when he had no proof of funds that any of this stuff was going to go through. He entered a deal in where he was fronted the money to buy out everybody else in the W Hotel, using the hotel as collateral for this loan. Does he default? Yes, he does. But it was wild that I don't think anybody would have said anything if, number one, he didn't default, and number two, he didn't have a 3-day birthday celebration. And it appears that there ain't no money. We got the loan. We know that the wire was successful, but we don't have anything to say that that money was used for the intended purpose. His business partner took him to court, and they took the hotel, ownership of the hotel. He at one point had 80%, owned 80% of this hotel. But since he secured the loan with it, they took in an entirety. And now it's the illnesses on them to prove fraud. And I don't think he had any intention of using this money to basically revitalize that hotel. This is not the only place that he's done this. He came in and got into a deal to purchase a hospital, art gallery. Nobody's being paid. Places understaffed and undersupplied. No art in the art gallery, just the space that's crumbling. It's been so bad in Puerto Rico that he was actually being sued by the Miss World production. They actually booed him. because everybody knows he's really a cool dude, very charismatic to talk to, but don't go into business with him because he's going to jip you. And with the Miss World production, he ended up not only being sued by the production company in a countersuit, but he ended up suing them for some type of fees, etc. But whatever he said he promised to do, it never came to fruition. There's several things that I don't understand. I guess I just don't ask for enough money. I'm in the throes of trying to use the equity on my house now to basically improve the value of the house. And they make it seem like, well, Bank of America anyways, is making it seem like I am trying to purchase this house. I'm just trying to have access to the equity on the house. This is how you build generational wealth. My biggest investment, I'm using the investment to actually fund not only upkeep, but enhancements to also increase the value of it. But because of the debacle of 2008 with the mortgage crisis, they now are tightening the reins on homeowners. That's really we good? I'm good for the money. I want to close in the back, do some other things, and to be able to sit in my house and enjoy my time, have a staycation every time, only venture out when I want to experience good food. I've seen enough of the world, but I want to be able to do something to make me enjoy my little piece of this world. But we got these people that are obviously on the grift, but nobody is checking their proof of funds. I've been with your bank for 30 years. You know exactly how much money I got. You know exactly when those direct deposits happen. But you still tripping and making me jump through all these hoops like I'm lying or something? Girl, bye. Get my face with that BS. That's all I got to say about that. But y'all give the Brock Pierces of the world, these white boys that can spin a good game, y'all still giving them millions of dollars. That it only appears that the people of Puerto Rico, the regular people, are going to be on the hook for it at the end of it. We got still empty hotels. People are still jobless, soon to be homeless, because you allowed these people that spun this good game, got money to burn, but they're not using it appropriately. Yeah, that's how we still have parts of the island. Either they doing rolling brownouts, or no, they having issues with just simple services. Yeah, because of these grifters.
Lift every chair and swing till all them white folks scream. Thought y'all could run up on our black king.
That is affectionately lift every chair and swing, right in time for the first anniversary of FAFFO Day, August 5th, known colloquially as the Alabama Broil or the Alabama Riverboat Broil. But as I said, it's officially the FAAFO Day. FAA. I wonder how Disney ever would have come into my focus on a section of woke history. But here we are. As part of my glorious Sunday routine, almost, can I say for 20 years? When did I start working in Dallas? Was it 2005? Yeah, it's almost been 20 years, 25 years, child. 20 years, child. 19 and a half, 18 and a half, 19 years. I read the New York Times. I skim a lot of it because a lot of it is not worth reading in its entirety. I cruise the obituaries like an old lady that I am. I definitely focus in on the book review section. And I used to read it because uh, when it went off air, of all things, Sex and the City, they used to call the Sunday New York Times style section, wedding section, a single girl's sports betting book or sports section. Anyways, they used those, I don't know if you could call them obituaries, but it was the end of single life or the death of your single life. It was like who their parents were, what their granddaddy did to New York society. She, up until she started planning her wedding, was principal at some high-flying law or financial firm. It was usually very funny, and I used to like the fashions. And this is New York Fashion Week, so even that's changed since it's not at Grant Park anymore. But again, I digress. I get a lot, or recently, I started a fraud section or a private investigation section of my podcast, and one of the things that helped in that is looking at the business section. And I used to always cruise the business section. I used to get ideas about what to invest in. I was early investor and had made, if I had sold and had been more diligent in following it before it dropped again, when the corporate or the little guy, like in the Robin Hoods of it all, were telling people to invest in stocks like AMC. I had gotten in and became a investor at AMC Entertainment before the stock basically and the CEO sold his stock when it at its height. However, I say all those things to say is because that's why, one of the reasons why I read the business section of the New York Times. And it's consistent. Uh, in another section of the podcast, I talk about cryptocurrency. That's fraud all day long. Or it is set up to be fraudulent. But Bryce Pearson and his homies, they're giving the Puerto Rico its get running for their money. But in this week's of why this ended up in woke history is petty by nature Bob Iger. Child, I know I'm petty, but I'm just petty on a firmly upper middle class level. I have my own slam book, but there is this level of intrigue and pettiness makes me think that this article, I thought I was reading either arts and entertainment and style section, or was this may actually be the beginning or part of somebody's book, because truth is stranger than fiction. And this has all the makings of probably something that Disney needs to publish. I don't know. Maybe, I don't think so. Maybe Netflix or one of the other streaming services, because streaming plays into this. This is the story, and it took up the vast majority of the business section, because it is a culmination of one person handpicking his successor, another Bob, who nobody's ever heard of, and then he undermined his entire interim as the CEO of supposedly the happiest place on earth. How you turn the happiest place on earth to a snake pit? How do you do that? How is that possible? Several things. How you do it? It seems like all of the executives of Disney actually don't even live in Florida. They all live in California. Live in places like Brentwood uh, and on estates and behind locked gates and shit. Bob Iger is one of the wealthiest and on par with Michael Jordan and his self-worth as just the CEO. He don't even play basketball. He don't do nothing, but had ran this company for 15 years and he's has a yearly salary of over $35 million and had, because of his amazing deals with people like Marvel, etc., has amassed bonuses in the hundreds of millions of dollars, making him one of the most wealthiest heads of a publicly traded company ever. And they've had a great run. You know what I mean? But what happened was he did not listen to his own counsel when he should have stepped down 10 years in, but he wanted to continue in the glory that is when you run a company, a multi-billion-dollar company, international company like Disney. We got Disney Paris, Disney Hong Kong, and two of their flagship here in the United States, in California and in Florida and in Orlando. And don't get it twisted. There is Disney and then there's Orlando. A lot of the service industry in Orlando depends on the separate entity that is Disney. That in itself I hope I study that in an upcoming business law course as a case study. I wonder if someone has written a case study about the corporate structure of Disney, because it is publicly traded. So you think there should be no secrets. You know what I mean? I don't need to know the details of the deal. I just want to know how this entity came into being. For example, but before I get to all of that, one of the things that Bob Chapek, he was always set up to fail, because it seems like Bob Iger wanted to just get the deal done and smooth with the celebrities and talent, but he didn't really want to do all the day-to-day that was required for a CEO, a powerful CEO of truly an international company. He wanted it both ways. He wanted his cake and he wanted to eat it too. And that wasn't going to fly, because nobody could have ever predicted the effect of COVID or the COVID pandemic and the mishandling that on an international level. Nobody could have predicted that. And to someone that, like Bob Chapek, the heir apparent, it became apparent that he was while you are in that Bob Iger glow and you are just his lapdog, his yes man, etc., until you kind of step back and that shine is no longer over your lapdog, then you just realize that what you thought was your clone really wasn't. He was basically acting and emulating you. And then as soon as you step back, you realize that he had no social graces. He had ingratiated himself into nothing, and he didn't have the same nuance, and he could not do both. What made you great is your ability to not only recognize creative talent and creative worth for what it is, being able to mesh that into corporate structure. That's what Bob too did not have. He looked stiff in selfies. He did not even realize he came in VHS, did some other distribution, and that's all he knew. He didn't have to grow beyond the limitations of how he climbed up the corporate structure. He was a yes man, he was obsequious, but that did not make him good CEO material. But you chose him because he was your lapdog. And then you show how petty you really were when it was apparent. You basically hung him out to dry. You basically would tell him anything because he was telling you stuff that you wanted to hear, even though you knew a lot of his ideals were at the expense of the talent. You knew that his ideas were not going to work because he could not, because he was so obtuse, I think, could not mesh, again, creative with corporate. There was no balance. Bob Iger was from the ilk where it seems like the corporate VPs were at one time talent, or they were really good with smoozing with the talent and getting the best of the talent, and then making great blockbuster movies and scoring great blockbuster deals. That was a heyday, but the Panorama Pro V was the great equalizer in all of that. So then once you realize that he was a bad choice, then basically he was like basically a placeholder until you basically fiddled around with the retirement, went out on your custom yacht, and then basically came back when he basically had burnt his own bridge. Because what ended up happening is the board, he basically reported to you and the board, and then the board supported him, but then the board said he's dumb as hell. And they knew he was dumb as hell. And then once he basically almost burned Disney to the ground, that's when they said, oh, shoot, we have nobody else that want to take this job. Now we got to ask him to come back. And that's what he did. He didn't have to, because y'all told him to shut up. He knew, I'm sure it seems like Bob Iger realized his ego riddled mistake in choosing this guy as his successor. It wasn't like the previous Bob Eisner, and choosing him. This Eisner choosing Iger, it wasn't that. It seems like this guy was completely inept at what he had to do. And it was a lot of things. I think it was on both parts. He did not have a clear vision forward of Disney. Any good CEO can actually swerve in the fate, because I think if he had been better prepared, he would have been able to look at and how to better the deals between talent, writers, production, to be able to navigate this new history with Disney. And then became the social reckoning when they did not denounce Don't Say Gay in Florida. And that's where this all comes back to full circle. We know Mickey and them are always a little to the left and swishy. We all know that. Donald Duck. Come on, y'all. Come on. However, most people don't know Disney, and especially in Florida, probably one of the reddest and most racist states in the South, but it has been a haven for the LGBTQ community plus community for years. They elected a really stupid ass governor that decided he wanted to go to slap box with Mickey Mouse. If anybody had read the history, and this was a business industry, Disney unto itself, because of agreements that are in no way about to be expired in this century, when Walt Disney or Roy Disney created that entity, They basically have so many protections from the state government itself. They have their own sewage, their own power, I believe. They are a district, separate district outside of the state of Florida. You can say what Ron DeSantis can say, whatever the ham sandwich he wants to say. They get basically a rebate from sales taxes, etc. All that revenue comes in through sales tax, but nobody ain't gonna roll up against Mickey Mouse. And basically, you slap boxing with an animated character, dumbass. They don't owe you anything. They can condemn anything. And if they basically had come out and denounced that stupid "don't say gay," anti homophobic policy, everybody would have said, "Oh yeah, Disney would. That's what Disney's all about." Why did it take you so long? And then it took you so long, and then you basically made an overcorrection. This is the Bob C. Made an overcorrection, and then that's another thing. Now that he's completely retired and y'all can't tell him to be quiet, Bob Iger, even though he knew he would have probably did it much earlier, because he also know this little bit of detail. You can tell Ron DeSantis and his fascist government basically to shut the hell up, because within itself, this is separate entity. Y'all don't have anything. Y'all don't have any. You don't do the roads. You don't do the sewer. You don't do the power. Disney manages all of that, and all y'all do is collect multi-hundreds of millions, probably on the level of billions of dollars in tax revenue. If Disney decided to basically up in itself and leave Florida in its current state, Florida government would shut down. Ron DeSantis knew that. And when he dubbed it woke Disney, it became a contraindication, because most everybody's like, of course Disney is woke. And you trying to use the woke to slander them, you basically you just look more stupid. We also know, y'all, you wouldn't have a job. There would be no revenue just because of Disney's separate and more equal than anybody's status. If they had played their cards right, they would have it would have been great. It wouldn't have been another nail in Bob C's coffin, and Bob Eisner, petty by nature, Iger, wouldn't have had anything else to say. The sad thing is, the happiest place on earth did become a snake pit, because it looks like a bunch of privilege and egos got in the way of what should have been a great transition in power. I think if they had not allowed Iger to stay on, or because he never was going to relinquish power, he was never going to just be chairman and be chill. He wanted to run and do it both, but no, nobody wanted to do that. But they were basically operating on Disney and in its heyday, and they did not. It was a miscalculation on the grandest of terms. And nobody realized that. You liberal until it's too expensive. That's what it basically came down to. Because when Disney's value, their stock value, take to 55%, they're basically, ooh, child, no, we can't do this. We're going to pull this, not do this. Or they associate a drop in stock value, and they tie that to being too liberal or too conservative. No, right is right and wrong is wrong. And at one point, Disney said that they can do right and not be morally bankrupt and still make a whole bunch of people very happy and make a whole bunch of bread. And that balance, I think, is missing in a lot of corporate structures, etc. And that's when you find out who your friends are and what their true belief systems are when they truly, if you truly are woke, and you truly have an emotional intelligence, you basically have that balance, or you try to correct it before this kind of nonsense goes out, basically brings you out, or you basically are fired and you can't get another job on the level of the Disneys, or you gotta leave a place because you sacrificed so much. And you say, well, was it all worth it? I'm sure Bob C is saying that right now. Was it really all worth it? To now he has to sue them. And he's like, he sounds like he's hesitant to sue them, but I wouldn't, because he sacrificed a lot of himself, probably his health, in order just to be tossed out. I don't know if I could not have taken such a job as such, but hindsight is probably already 2020. If I knew, or I would have foresaw some of these things, and you saw how hinky they were within a few months of you even taking the job, I would have started exiting stage right, doing what I needed to do to be able to either leave on my own terms, or get somebody else in to replace, because it was obvious from the beginning that he was out against you, and you did not have the social or corporate support to be able to, or the core of public opinion to be able to keep your job. That was the article. He had basically given quote by quote to a response from a New York Times reporter 4 months into your tenure in your job. Bob Iger went on record, said, I think I made a mistake. You had only had the job. It wasn't even 4 months. It was 2 months. Child, Yep. I would have either been, I don't really would have believed that my contract, and maybe this is just me being African American, your contract is not going to save you if somebody really wants to get rid of you. These employee at will contracts, if someone really wants to get rid of you, they may have their own burn book of their own. They may actually have more pull than you do. The machinations that happen in these boardrooms are just crazy. And on this type of level, this we talking about on $1 billion level, multi-billions of dollars, and you concerned about just a couple 100,000? Child, please. These fools were after you from the beginning. But I don't know if it was your privilege or you thought you were going to be protected by your contract. None of those are in this world, and of corporate intrigue. None of those are protectors. And if you trip out long enough, not only you can't, what would have been easier if you hadn't been such a jackass, you could have been allowed to resign, or they could have promoted you or just sent you to somewhere else in the country. You could have kept your reputation and it wouldn't have been no beef. But nope. Because of some of the petty machinations of Bob Iger, and then you basically shot your own self in the foot. No, that's never going to happen. All of these things I say is people can be slimy. And as I said, your privilege in a contract are not your end all and be all at protection in the corporate structure. You got to be smart. You got to be savvy. Do your job well. If you can't feel like you need to do your job, ask for help, make the changes, and then also plan your safer parachute. If you just have to leave, or if it truly becomes inattainable, what is your plan B? That's the other thing you used to plan. You have to plan for discharge. This is for me days working in the hospital. Discharge planning starts on admission. If the patient gets better, depending on the day, what is the second step? Get the appointments, set up. Are they going to need to go into more longer term therapy in an inpatient setting? Those things you got to think of. So at the time you get your job, what is going to be your next step? Because as this story has shown, they would not have taken up this particular writer would not have been given the space to detail the intrigue, the ins and outs of this particular interaction if there hadn't been multiple nuances and truths to be learned. Always, there's a corporate ceiling. Two, this is what tripped me out. Not only did the first black studio head get fired in this debacle, he was always set up to fail because Disney Studios, the entity that Bob C had created, was never going to make it. Because as I said, it was not a perfect merging of creative talent and a corporate structure, because the corporate structure, based on how it was at that time, was not amendable for a collective merging of the two that could have been on the level of a Bob Iger kind of merging. And again, the pandemic self-selected them to also fail. So not only he became the fall guy, first in, first out, lost his job, which is sad because he was never set to sail, because it was like putting a pig in a tuxedo. It's still a freaking stinky ass pig. You know what I mean? That. And also, Disney was said to be woke and a lot of opportunities within that corporate structure. The way they handled the don't say gay, one of their most high ranking, there has never been a chief executive like, what's homegirl's name? Who also was gay, Susan Arnold, and I'm sure a lot of the other lower management was of the LGBTQI plus community, but they didn't really flaunt it, and they really weren't out. And there are few women that sat on the board, few African Americans and persons of color that sat on the board. It's obvious from a race relations and an inclusivity standpoint, Disney has and has a lot of work to do. It was ran by a whole bunch of old white dudes stuck in their prison of their privilege. So I just think it was just this particular article is a glaring tale, not just of corporate intrigue, but in a place that appears to be happy. And I'm sure they had, before this crap happened and all the social upheaval of the last 4 years has happened, at one point it was considered a great place to work, or employees were happy. Not anymore, child. All DEI and inclusivity programs and articles like this point out is, from a society standpoint in general, there's so much more work to be done. And what is considered, when we basically don't weaponize, how can I say this? When we can weaponize doing the right thing against someone, that's when society needs to go to some correction. No, I'm not saying a full swing to the left or to the right. All I'm just saying is people sometimes still need to be told to do the right thing. So when you remove all of the safeties, they're not going to do the right thing. And I keep saying this. We see admissions to the Harvards and the MITs of the world, we see lows basically saying, no, we really don't need to do the right thing, even though their upper management still looks like a clan gathering. So, whatever. It makes me still hopeful that there are people that understand what is right. And unfortunately, like Disney, they only going to understand when their stock prices and when their stores start to close and when their stock prices take a hit. When you really hit somebody in the pockets, that's when they understand. They were like, well, if nobody's buying, we're going to protect our salaries, but we're not going to protect the little man's salaries. We're not going to protect the sales tax revenue to your community. So maybe you want to reconsider removing those programs that are the safety. So at least try to give the appearance that you do want to continue to do the right thing. How about that?
The Shady Bunch, the Shady Bunch. I hope turning up for checks to pay for fake lifestyles. Working up.
So I'm watching or rewatching. Actually, I'm watching for the first time from a different perspective, Real Housewives of OC. And I can say, starting from season 1 and comparing to season freaking 18, this joint has been on for 19 years. I believe it was the first one before Beverly Hills, definitely before Real Housewives of Atlanta. But this franchise or iteration of Real Housewives is probably the craziest shit I've ever seen. I compare the lack of styling and filters that was like basically seasons 1 through 7. I can't understand why horseface Vickie Gunvalson thinks she is the show and why she would think that without her this show could not progress, because there have been so many more interesting people. And then there's been some very interesting people that have come through that really should have been canceled. I think the Tres Amigos in their prime, which I think I'm watching it now, like season 12, 13 is when they came into full focus. I think there were probably some real true production changes and decisions that were going on that did lead to Tamara Judge being put on pause. Because I don't know, was there a time that she just checked out? I'm not sure. It was because of Eddie Judge, her husband, going through his health issues with persistent atrial fibrillation. And it was just, I'm sure it got boring. I'm not there yet. Because these ladies' trips that they're going on really do make me laugh. And I've just basically have started taking notes on some of the housewives. And I'm just going to start at the top. This episode of my podcast is running long, and I apologize for that. It's just like I have a lot to say. But anywho, this particular show in all of its iterations did not become interesting until like season 7. This is when Tamara actually divorced her first husband, and she became the MFN Tamara Judge. Brooks, what's his name, from Mississippi. This was Vickie Gunvalson's Gunvalson's ex. shady fraud boyfriend. But anyways, that whole lie that he told faking cancer basically gave her basically a storyline for 2 seasons was actually tragic because it could have been the end of her job. It really could have been. If they had bought the receipts that she knew all about it, and if Brooks wasn't complicit, or production may have been complicit, she should have been fired. This was on the level and worse than anything Phaedra Parks said when she left Real Housewives of Atlanta after she lied on Candy. And Portia know that because she could have been put on pause and terminated. But maybe it's because Vickie never deflected that. She repeated something from production. She didn't lie on production. Maybe that's why then that twist was not added. But I don't know if we'll ever know what the real true deal was, because if Phaedra's lips are moving, she's lying. But I digress. They always talk about women being entitled. I'm watching season 13 now. This is when Shannon Beador was going through her divorce. She's complaining about $13,000 a month in rent, how the owners actually keep selling the house and she just has to keep moving. Oceanfront homes, they call her entitled, and rich woman problems. Yeah, rich white woman problems. People would be happy that they can afford rent, cars, and the lifestyle that Shannon actually has. And she actually has a really, popular and food line that she debuted on QVC. That seems to be the outlet, or the Home Shopping Network. This seems to be the outlet because she's not the only one that has made inroads with QVC and Home Shopping Network. We saw the DeBros do it. We saw famously Lisa Rinna do it. And we even had Nene Leakes actually had her line on QVC. She's basically using her fame in a positive way to have another stream of income. And I think that's dope. But she's always a negative Nelly. I laugh at how I didn't realize until the show came out that Heather Dubrow, she actually was a B-list actress. She didn't take Terry Dubrow's name until the show came out. That added to her storyline. Alexis Bellino, Jesus Jugs, and how much of a nasty piece of work she is, and her ex-husband is. And how she basically went after, I think her and Vickie always had beef, or was it Shannon? Because I think she was off the show when Shannon actually came on. But now she is dating Shannon Beador's ex-boyfriend, who basically she caught a case when she drove her car into his house. And evidently they are toying with releasing the ring cam footage of that whole encounter, which I think is really sad. Vickie and her kids have been douchey since the beginning. I thought Vickie's kids, even at her daughter, Brianna, who seemed to be her mama's lap dog, she actually, until she really got away from her and basically had her own life, she was actually a douche. But her son Michael is a douche. I'm sorry. Brooks Ayers is the ex-boyfriend. He was king douche. And then I'm watching her with her current boyfriend. He seems to be as boring as her ex-husband Don, but equally douchey tendencies. He just hides it a little bit better. Also, my concern was Brianna. She didn't seem to actually get sick until she came back to the OC, unless because the cameras weren't there when she was in Oklahoma. I don't know if it was her mama stressing her out, or was it truly something in that house or being around a toxic environment that only her mother can create. I think I don't know if I could have spoken or had my mother around her or her kids when Vickie was calling her a bitch and she was lying about that slimeball Brooks Ayers, the physical abuse. It was like every time from the time that that child was little until he made a pass at her, that her mother did a piss poor job of not protecting her. And if we just don't have not seen it on camera where Brianna basically throws that back in her face, how she's been basically a poor example of what a mother should do to protect her daughter. It always seems that some relationships between mother and daughter can be really toxic, even between sisters. And this is one of those situations. I give Vickie G rated G for garbage because she truly is a trash human being. And I can understand why I would, if I was current production, she would only be offered a friend of the show. I would not give her screen time because she basically uses the show to promote Kodo Insurance and she's not even trustworthy. She is out for Vickie G and Vickie G only. And whatever crumbs she can get and whatever shade she can throw and saying some weird stuff to Tamara J, because Tamara is the face of this show. And she looks good for her age. And that's why Vickie and her horse face and her horse face kids are jealous. Sorry. I said it, and I said what I said. Kelly Dodd was on from like season 10, maybe 11, and then they put her off the show when she was a Karen, probably raging about the mask mandates. If she would only own her Hoation and she didn't act like a crazy person when you made her mad, she don't know what the defamation is or the intent is, or if somebody intentionally lies on you and then it ruins your business career. Nobody ain't telling lies. They basically are telling her the truth about her crazy and reckless mouth. She's always strong and wrong, always has been combative, and she's classless. She would be on par with Tamara Judge, but she's without a clue, and she's still young, and she's still obviously very stupid. She's worth $20 million, but she gets a grade G for garbage. Shannon Beador is always in the grasp of some victimhood, but I think she's playing her cards right as looking like a little wounded bird, especially in season 18, because she got caught rolling dirty. And there is no way she could recover from it, except that she has these ladies split down the middle about who is supporting her garbage. The amount of loss that she has had, the ups and downs between her and her husband, David Beador, how he basically started dating this teenager, but girl's 34 years old, but 20 years younger than he was. They have a now child. How she seems so lost, but she's so needy. The problem with her is she gets into these horrible cycles of negativity, and she cycles and she cycles and she cycles and she just can't get and I can see it being paralyzing. We saw her with this divorce, how basically Tamara had to tell her, girl, you need to snap out of it. You need to look at, you have so many other positives in your life. Yes, you gained 35 pounds. Yes, David had already divorced you. She was so concerned about a lie that Vickie Gunvalson had said, and she got into her head and it paralyzed her. So she gained all this weight, checked out of her marriage, and the same thing, she was so concerned about it affecting her marriage and her kids, and it really did. It was like self-fulfilling philosophy. And she's done this again, and I can see her spinning out on this show. And the only way you're going to break, instead of letting her continue to spin, is do the tough love that Tamara is doing. I don't think it's going to backfire because I've rewatched season 12 and 13, and it took Tamara breaking her foot. That was funny. But I had to sit her down and say, look, girl, look at all the positive things that you have. No, you're not in your big house anymore. Yes, you did get divorced, but own your own Haitian and stop, you know, bogging me down with your psychological detritus. Of course, Tamara J is a lot of things, but she would never use those words. But I digress. She is so pathetic, and she has such trash human tendencies. She tries, but she gets very selfish because she wants you to support her, but she won't support you. She's basically a one-sided friend. And Tamara just gets sick and tired of it and put her on blast. That's actually what friends do. And we're catching a lot of those moments because we're pointing out that, yes, Trace Amigos, and that's the other thing. She's basically trying to call out Tamara because Tamara dropped her. Also, they actually had Trash Human number one, Vickie Gunvalson, come on as a friend of, and they say how Trace Amigos had imploded. Well, Tamara Judge didn't really need Trace Amigos as much as they needed her. Because, when Bravo dropped Tamara after, I believe it was season 14 is what I read on the interwebs, they basically stopped talking to her. And they didn't become Trace Amigos until basically Tamara was brought back because those intervening seasons were just so bad. The ratings were horrible. The ratings did not pick up until they basically made Tamara Judge a full-time housewife again in season 17. And that's when Trace Amigos went global. They started touring. And basically doubling down on their variety show was doubling down on the friendship that we basically saw on screen. But what also happened is when Tamara Judge came back, she started Two T's in a Pod, a podcast with equal popularity, and she got other gigs, and she didn't need the variety show anymore. Her alliance was them. The alliance between them was predicated on all of them being together. Vickie Gunvalson was basically put on pause. All this nonsense was going on between John and Shannon. And Shannon was actually lying about the extent of her alcohol abuse. And Tamara just basically did like she did her in season 13. She's like, I don't need this. You telling people that you don't drink, or you go into the meetings, or you down to a 2 drink a day or a week, 2 time a week thing, and your whole glass travel mug is full of alcohol. She got tired of it. My thing is, it may look bad, but only a true person or somebody with some type of feeling that is, or they respect what the friendship that you actually had, they're going to call you out on your BS. If you think you're fat, you want to lose weight, then lose weight, but don't keep whining about it. Stop calling me in the middle of the night and putting pressure on my marriage just because of your BS you keep dumping on me. I don't think Tamara Judge her Shannon Beador or Vickie Gunvalson a damn thing. Because when the chips were down, when she was off the show for those 3 seasons, they didn't have jack to say to her. We thought they were friends until the chips were down. But once the cameras weren't rolling on both of them, Vickie and Vickie and Shannon went the way of the woolly mammoth. They didn't become the Trace Amigos and start touring until all 3 of them were back on the show. And because they needed her again, and the show needed Tamara J more than those 2. I'm not necessarily a Tamara Judge stan, but I just call it like I see him. Because although I admire what Tamara brings to this show, she's a messy effer. She really is. But she's open about the messiness and she owns her messiness. And we see her get baptized and we see her working on her. And she knows she's a work in progress and she owns it. But she also be talking outside of her neck. Eddie keep telling her, you ain't got no nickel in that dime, but she still be messy. Heather Bro says she's an MD. She's married. She's married to a doctor, but she acts like all those women that their husbands were officers when I was in the military. You ain't an officer, girl. Just like this hoe ain't a physician. She's a out of work actress with a whole bunch of kids, and they rich as all get out. She is married to a doctor who is a douche. He's a good dude, but he is an amazing plastic surgeon from what I've seen on TV. And she's a douche by association. And she has enabled him to be a douche and to continue in his douchey ways for the last 30 years. They seem to be happy. They keep buying and selling real estate. They're breaking records all over Southern California. I ain't mad at her. I feel almost bad for the kids, how hard that they have to work to abstain from the douchey tendencies of their families, but I am hopeful. And I didn't realize until like this last episode that Ace is actually the transgender son whose dead name is Colette. She was a trip. She reminded me of the actual character. Was it Max or Blake? I can't remember. Charlotte's on and all that. Carrie Bradshaw's the second iteration of Sex in the City. And all of that. I don't remember the name of that show, even though it's been renewed for like season 3 or 4. She reminds me of Charlotte's youngest daughter, the one that was not Rose. Was it Rose and Myrtle or Mabel? I don't remember. But also Charlotte's daughter is now maybe transgendered, non-binary. I think her pronouns are they, but it appears that Ace has changed his name and is masculine presenting. So I just think this is better. That storyline, if that child wants to explore his transition on air, I think if they handled it with respect, it could that's why we watch. This is real stuff, and it's not some produced lies of the bygone days, of the early days of Real Housewives. And it's more so not the manufactured BS they're trying to drum up drama, like this whole debacle if Heather Dubrow called the paparazzi while her family was at Disney. Who cares? Who cares, girl? Move on. And the extent of the bond between Emily and Gina, I didn't realize when Gina first got on the show, this was the beginning of the end of her actual marriage. And she basically moved out with how their families contending with the separation between her and her husband, the closeness of her relationship with her mother, and I didn't realize she was from Long Island. But just how much Emily, I didn't know that her husband Shane was part Persian and it was also a Mormon. There was a lot of stuff that just was wow. Because when they said Mormon, I immediately thought Muslim. And then I was like, Mormon? Wow. But Emily didn't convert. And he's not that bad looking. He's shorter than what I expected and how tall Emily is. But she's actually a practicing lawyer for a while. Her kids are bad, all over the place. Her journey with IVF and having more kids, that's the kind of stuff that makes these shows real. And this manufactured thing and drama, we just don't need more of that. That is what the end of Jersey was. The last couple of seasons in Real Housewives of Atlanta, that's what actually almost killed it until Candy left and they're making some true decisions about full-time cast members at this time. They barely recover from Marlo becoming a full-time peach holder. We just don't need any more manufactured drama. As I said, real life is more interesting than fiction that they try to drum up on these shows. These women have the potential for great storylines. Why you got to make up anything when you basically, if you feel comfortable or strong enough to put the real on, you don't need to manufacture anything. And that's the realness and sacrifices some of these talent actually do, like the Tamara Judge of it all, the Ginas of it all, the Ace Dubrows of it all. That's the realness that the audience wants to see. I need to see more of that. No manufacture. I don't need to see another facelift because Vickie's not going to be able to close her eyes. And she's going to have some type of weird complication where she's going to have corneal transplant. Please no more, Shannon, get your eyes done. No more fillers. I'm sorry. The only person that seems to be aging gracefully from the last time she got her deep facelift, season 12, is Tamara J. And again, I said what I said. I don't think Tamara J owes Shannon B anything. Does she need to lay off? No. But I think she needs to get her straight that her answers and her strength is truly within, and it doesn't need to be relied upon by her dumping her psychological BS on her friends. That's all I got to say about that.
For checks to pay.
So that's how we're going to end this episode, and I'm going to end it with a positive word. I used to scoff at people making this statement because of its simplicity, or maybe because it sounded more like an admonishment that I was being everything but kind. But then when I started investigating it for myself, that's when I realized that I was confusing politeness with kindness. Politeness is a fake, superficial manner in which there's no required investment, no self-reflection. But being kind is an adjective. It is an action. If you're kind to yourself first, it's like exercise memory. You will continue and be kind to others. Let that sit with you for a while. I'm going to try to be kind to myself. I'll be kind to others. It's very simple, and you got to repeat it. Lean into the spirit of a new year by counting your blessings, giving to others, and spreading happiness. I know I will. And this episode or this podcast is my means to spread joy and happiness and light and enlightenment. There's so much going on with aggression and just meanness. But if I can leave you with one small positive thought, start your day with that. That can change everything for you, and just basically change your day. Don't forget to check out Dale's Angels Inc. for the notes on this podcast, as well as other works by CQM that are, and other contributors that are in work or in being edited right now. Also, check out my Instagram feed, TNFro is Reading. You can check me out on Facebook, TNFro is Reading Book Club, as well as my YouTube channel, TNFro is Reading and Eating. And what I'm just chatting and streaming at TV Food Wine Girl on Twitter. Navigate to Writer's Block Coffee or shipabagadicks.com. Use my promo code TNFro Coffee or TNFro Got Jokes respectively to get a percentage off of your order. Don't forget to drop me a line at TNFroisreading@gmail.com. All non-trolling messages may be actually read online, and you can do the same if you are in Podbean or Anchor or wherever you listen to the podcast. And again, shedding light and positivity. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode as much as I've enjoyed creating it. Until next time, bye.